SOS, or Support Our Seniors, came about as a result of the Parks and Recreation Commission of Ashland beginning to dismantle the Senior Center, which has worked beautifully for over 43 years now. It started with only those people who were concerned about the Senior Center and concerned about what was going to happen to the elderly seniors who had used it frequently. As we got together and began to investigate, we found more and more problems going on that were not transparent, were not known to the public, and the more we researched and the more we dug, the more we found that Parks and Recreation has a lot of problems. We listed 5 of what we considered the most egregious problems on our recall. The commissioners have come back now making wild allegations that are not supported by fact. This press conference is our way of responding to their unsubstantiated allegations.
The commissioner's no recall campaign flyer states some facts to counter the recall reasons. And the facts that they state isn't exactly pertinent to the issues raised by the recall. When they address the mismanagement of budget, they point to that the parks budget is always balanced with the city budget. And they also say that the Oregon budgetary process makes it impossible to mismanage the budget. That's not true. It does allow deficit spending during the year as long as the city appropriates the funds. It also does not prevent deficits being projected in the future. It does allow any one program to overspend. The commissioners also present as a counterfact that in 2017, an independent audit was performed and found no irregularities. However, the audit was of financial statements of money spent through June 30th, 2017. It was not of the projected budget. Auditors sign a letter that the audit was completed in accordance with acceptable audit standards and no fraud is found, with caveats. However, what they verify is that the numbers fairly represent what was spent. It does not comment on how it was spent.
I would like to address the Parks and Recreation Commission's operating fund balance, which was projected to have a deficit in 2023 of $5.9 million. Now, I don't know how most people keep their accounts, but if any of my accounts or any accounts that I am responsible for showed a $5+ million projected deficit, I would be desperately seeking to know why, what happened, and what can we do about it. Apparently, the commissioners didn't even notice it until this recall came up. And suddenly it became a huge issue. They have had it checked, and I understand that they are now saying that that was a mistake. And it could possibly be as low as $600,000. Well, it may not mean much to them, but when they have $9 million a year or $18 million every 2 years to complete their job, to even have a projected loss of $600,000, to me is major. And they should have been looking at why. In addition to that, they are in the process of spending $230,000 on a Portland consulting firm. I've talked with an engineer who told me that there are a number of firms in the Rogue Valley that are quite capable of handling the same type of consulting. And yet, we're paying a Portland firm to do so. My question is, why?
Another thing reported on the flyer by the commissioners was about the violation of Oregon state public meeting laws. They said that the city recorder verified that there were no violations. However, they did not address the APRC senior subcommittee meetings, where the first meeting was to set the goals of the subcommittee. And a memo shows that they met to set those goals, and it was not a public meeting. They met in private. Commissioner Gardiner said that the 5 subcommittee meetings were well attended, and they listened to all the public input. Well, that isn't exactly how we saw it. Jim Bachman, who is the husband of Jackie Bachman, who was on the Senior Advisory Board and is now the chair of the ad hoc Senior Advisory Committee, he wrote a guest opinion that was in the Tidings on August 30th. And what he wrote, he said, in fact, our perception of the process is exactly the opposite. The agenda for the January 24th meeting was not available until the meeting day, violating anyone's interpretation of meeting laws requiring adequate public notice. 2, the first and last meetings were well attended only because seniors networked to make that happen. My wife was one of the few, if any, public attendees at meetings 2 through 5. 3, there was no evidence that the subcommittee considered any of the public testimony received at these meetings. 4, minutes from many meetings were not posted on the city website in a timely manner, making it difficult, if not impossible, for those not attending meetings to follow the decision-making process. In fact, many of them were not posted until after the August 9th APRC meetings, at which Parks and Recreation Director Michael Black's recommendations were accepted. Commissioner's flyer also stated that the ignored recommendations from the 2016 performance audit was not correct. And they gave the fact that the audit specifically stated that the seniors were underserved and that the parks acted accordingly. However, the parks ignores the critical recommendation that the parks should conduct a comprehensive community needs assessment to verify possible underserved groups. The parks ignored the audit statement that the existing senior staff could create this expansion. And the parks ignores that the audit identified the senior center's social services as a strength and positive feature.
When Christine Dodson was laid off by Michael Black, working conditions for the remaining staff at the senior center became untenable. Their program manager was gone, and there they were, 4 part-time, temporary employees trying to keep the office going without the leadership that had headed up the program for over a decade. Director Black advised in Dodson's layoff notice that he intended to lay off the entire staff by October 1st. Without the program manager there, they could not continue to do their jobs or maintain the senior program functioning at the optimum level. The statements made by the former staff on the recall ballots and the no recall flyers are at best gross misrepresentations of the truth, or are at worst simply lies. The commissioners have provided no proof or evidence of any kind of the facts. If these facts are true, why are they only being brought up now during this recall? There was no mention of any irregularities, systemic or otherwise, when the terminations occurred. These false statements are nothing more than extremely damaging accusations and after-the-fact rationalizations for the actions that were taken.
In addition, Christine Dodson's attorney has issued a cease and desist order to the City of Ashland, demanding that they stop the false statements that the Parks and Recreation Commissioners have made on their letters in response to the recall petitions, and, quote, demanding that given the glaring falsity of those statements and the serious harm they have done and continue to do to Ms. Dodson's professional reputation, we demand their immediate removal from commissioners' statements, the city's written assurance that it will not be republished in any form, and the issuance of a letter of correction.
Last week, a very professional postcard was mailed to Ashland voters. It featured glowing accounts of past contributions by the 3 Park and Rec commissioners being recalled. What they didn't tell you was that this statement, signed by a former mayor in support of these gentlemen, was done by a political consultant. Cathy Shaw's, one of her current business efforts is doing paid political consulting all around Oregon. It was a diversionary tactic. These men are not being recalled because of past accomplishments, but because their recent decisions have been deplorable. Some object to the recall concept, but even a failing quarterback must be replaced before doing even further damage.